and welcome to Medieval Murder, the podcast that brings all things gruesome and historical to the comfort of your own home or car or wherever it is you're listening from. My name is Hannah Purtymun, and I'm here with my father, Kevin Purtymun,
No.
to discuss some of the most famous and infamous murders that took place in the medieval and early modern periods. Medieval Murder came to be first as a blog, then as an Instagram, and now as a podcast. The podcast will feature some of the most famous murders in medieval history, some mini-episode series on different types of medieval murders, and interviews with historians and history enthusiasts alike. What are we doing today?
Today we are going to medieval Ireland. We're going to talk about Brian Boru or King Brian. I want to kind of set a little background. So Brian was born in 941 near Killahoe, Ireland, which is on the River Shannon. Okay. So, but I want to kind of go back and he eventually becomes the king of Munster and then kind of like the king of all Ireland. But I wanted to kind of give a picture of what it was like in Ireland prior to that time. Okay. So when we're saying Munster for, King Brian and all this going on here, we're talking, it was the southwest province of Ireland, and it's really kind of the counties Clare, Cork, Kerry, Limerick, Tipperary, and Waterford. So it's a big area. It's kind of like that southern portion of Ireland. Um, but the power in the kingdom always kind of laid in the south, and there was some I apologize if I'm murdering this, but Google Translate said it was Awanasta, and they kind of in like 400 they ruled Munster, and they established the colonies of Cork, Kerry, and they made Cashel their home. I mean, we went there.
Yeah, we did.
And
Yeah, the Rock of Cashel.
yeah, and we went to Tipperary, and we kind of drove around that area. It's a beautiful area. Highly recommend. But at this time in Ireland, there were probably like maybe, maybe like 150 little kind of kingdoms with 150 people calling themselves kings, right? And, back in
And they were just kings because of the power they held, or because of bloodlines, or
I think because of the power they held. I'm not sure. I mean, if you really
because of
look at
money.
like it's I don't know that it's actually going to be money in 400. It's going to probably be land and resources and maybe some money and doing some trading, but as we work up into the 900s, there's a lot of kind of feuds going on, right? Yeah. Okay. And so, and then the Vikings show up, right?
Yeah.
So the Vikings show up kind of early in the 10th century, and the Wanasta don't do a great job of defending themselves against the Vikings, right? Part of the problem was we have all these separate little entities, and then here come the Vikings, and they can't band together to kind of fight them out. So they kind of drop one by one. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Because they're not united.
Yeah, they're not what's the word? Communicating.
Right.
They're not.
And they're not working together against a common enemy. So that's kind of when we see the Owanista the dynasty just kind of drop off. And the Viking raiders, they settle in Waterford and Limerick. They also kind of establish themselves on the River Liffey there in Dublin. And I think that county, it was Leinster is what I came up with. But then we see another dynasty kind of come into play, and it's the one that Brian belongs to, and it's the Dollhouse dynasty in like the late 10th, 11th, 12th centuries, right? But
Okay.
also, it should be noted at a certain point after this battle we're going to talk about at Clontarf, a good time after that, the Owanistok kind of come back, especially in Cork, and you can link them to the McCarthys, O'Callaghan's, O'Keefe's, right? And
Okay.
the Dollhouse dynasty, which King Brian was, big in, that becomes the O'Briens. Who'd have
Oh,
thought
okay.
it,
Yeah.
right? And then um, so we have all that going on, and is anything kind of researching the medieval times, it gets a little murky. But according to some stuff I read, his he came from a big family. He might have been the youngest of 12. Sounds like a good Irish Catholic family to me. I mean, my
Yeah.
mom was Irish Catholic in Massachusetts, and she had 13 brothers and sisters, and we're talking the 1920s. So, I mean, we have tradition. We have tradition here. Um, but during that time, he saw the Vikings, in some of the accounts I read, he saw the Vikings kill his father. Okay.
Brian did.
And Brian did. And then when
Okay.
he was a boy. And then at a certain point, as he got older, he saw them, probably Vikings and Irishmen alike that were teamed up, kill his mom and several of his brothers. There's an account
Wow.
of him watching it from a hill. And so he really didn't like the Northmen,
I
right?
mean, fair.
But as we and at that point he like took up the arms, the battle axe, the spear, the sword, and he's gonna fight it out.
Yeah.
Um, so at a certain point, his brother, um, his and it might have been a half brother at this point. I don't know, but his brother, um, Mothman, Mathman, I don't know. Google Translate me, um, Mothman. He becomes the king of Munster, probably in the late 900s, and he's assassinated um, by a guy named Mordor, but he's actually kind of working for, and this is on the orders of a Viking from the Dublin Leinster area.
Okay, so he's been ordered to be killed.
Right. So there's an assassination of his brother, tied tied to the Vikings.
Yeah, he's gonna have a serious grudge.
Right. So he, after the death of his brother, he was like one of the younger ones. He never thought he would be king. So now he becomes kind of the king of his little area. And
Okay.
now we're going to see the rise of him in in the area of Munster, right? And
Yeah.
he's got he neighboring Leinster and Connacht are he's doing some campaigns in there because of the death of his brother. And there's a guy named Mal Shitnall that who's the king in those areas, and they come at odds, but they make a kind of a truce, right, where they have an understanding. And it kind of should be noted that like at this time there's not like it it's not like you may have like some small incidents. There was one kind of outside of Munster where it was kind of like a Braveheart thing where he led his men, with his axe, and they had this big battle and won. but for the most part, these are like any fighting that's done at this time isn't like big battles like you think that we've talked about kind of in Egel and England. They're
Yeah.
more of uh, kind of what we saw in early Egel, where they're kind of raiding, but
Okay.
they're not leaving. I mean, they're like really small engagements. They may be like stealing livestock, maybe pillaging a village,
Yeah.
just kind of asserting their dominance. Kind of, I don't know. Today we'd call it terror. Um, they and that's kind of how they were operating. So Munster's really kind of taken off at this point. Um, and it's about 997 that uh, Malashitnal and Brian agree to establish separate spheres of influence. They're going to leave each other alone. Um, but during this time, it didn't last long because by about 1006, Brian is now kind of essentially the king of Ireland.
Of
He's
all of
asserted,
Ireland.
yeah, yeah, and looking at the map, it's kind of what we think of as maybe Southern Ireland. You know, we're not
Okay. But
like
he's
talking
he's
about.
about 60 at this time?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and so he, you know, you got some historians say that his goal was to drive all the Vikings out of Ireland because he's so pissed about everything they've done and unite Ireland. And you can there's some some that are saying that he's uniting Ireland through let's unite and get these guys out and you know we're going to
Mhm.
be and and but then there's some that are saying that he's asserting his dominance. So it's probably lays somewhere in the middle. He
Yeah.
asserted his dominance by scaring the shit out of everybody and making them fear him.
Yeah.
But so he's about 60 at this time. And there's one account where in like 1002, 1003, that there's a big ceremony on the rock there at Cashel at
Mhm.
the place we went to, where he is like coronated King of Ireland,
Okay.
right? And that to me seemed like that would be a big deal. And I I question whether it really happened because it's in one reading but not another one. You know what I mean? It would seem like it
Interesting.
it would be a constant, right?
You would
You know,
you would think, yeah, you would think something that big would have permeated.
right. And so in a lot of circles, he is considered the first genuine king of Ireland.
Okay.
Um, and his control was always kind of uncertain and secured only through massive displays of military might that intimidated rivals and kind of like we were talking and averted potential rebellions, right?
Okay.
and
Yeah.
and so in 1013 one of these things breaks out, and we'll go ahead and I want to kind of set the scene for this because there's some backstory. So if we go back in time, the the Vikings came from Scandinavia and they established themselves on the southern bank of the river Liffey, like we talked about in the ninth century. And it became the city and the kingdom of Dublin, right?
Mhm.
So we've been there too. But by the end of the 10th century, that kingdom was like kind of a hybrid, and it was called Hibernio Scandinavia, right? And
Mhm.
so a lot of the Irish had intermarried and they were kind of getting along. And Dublin had become like a trading center because its location on the Irish Sea.
Yeah.
And so none of the kings, to that point wanted to nobody wanted to go take them on and destroy it because it was so important to Ireland, if that makes sense, because it was
Yeah.
a trade thing. And So we've got the economic implications of the Vikings in Dublin. I mean, because they were, you know, kind of at the heart of themselves. They were traders, right?
Yeah.
But and there was a huge, I mean, there was a considerable international market in slaves at the time there, and it was like the main way that foreign goods got into Ireland, right?
Okay.
Uh, so as kings grew in their ambition, they wanted to control Dublin rather than to destroy it. And part of this kingdom, Hibernio Scandinavian Dublin, was um, taken out of the kingdom of, here we go again, Leinster. But but in the late 10th century, these guys, although they're pissy with Dublin, they're willing to kind of side with them in the face of Brian's aggression.
Okay.
So, um, but they they did suffer a heavy defeat in the Battle of Ma in 999, and
Okay.
after that, Brian did sack the city of Dublin, right?
Okay.
And, and he did demonstrate his authority by settling the kingship of Dublin upon its defeat. So So he defeated this king, and it was Strictric Silkbeard, also known as Strig Olafsson, so a Viking. And within a few years, he had elevated Mal Morda to the kingship of um, Leinster and by default Dublin. Should be
Okay.
noted, like a lot of the kingships and people in power at that time, he was a some he was a brother-in-law to Brian.
Okay.
Now it's very convoluted. I'm not going to get into it on how he's exactly is a brother-in-law, like twice removed. I don't know. Somehow he was related to Brian, and Brian put him in charge. And so for almost a decade, you know, Melmort played nice with Brian, and they kind of what he wanted got done, and they worked well together.
Yeah.
So that brings us up to about 10, 12. There's going to be a showdown at Clontarf.
Okay,
Okay.
and at this point he's about 70.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. He's about 70.
Okay.
um
And the Battle of Clontarf is between Brian's people and the Mal people.
the Malmorda.
Malmorda.
Yes,
Okay.
they are. But it should be noted, like the year preceding this battle, there was a lot of intense warfare in the east and the south of Ireland. Okay, there's a lot of kind of unrest, right? I think people
Okay.
are sensing just what you sensed, that Brian's almost 70,
Ah, so
right?
they're sensing there's going to be a big change.
There's gonna be a change. So, you know, kind of see that in our presidential election this year. There's everybody's old.
You're
You
right.
could so 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 there's a lot of unrest in the kingdom, you know.
Yeah.
Um and they were actually getting attacked kind of by naval forces, which I would assume would be the Vikings. You know, they're
Yeah.
coming up the river. They're coming up the River Shannon. They're coming up the River Liffey a little bit. Um, and he spent the final months of the year in the field. So he's out now. He's out in the field with doing battle, or he's with his troops at the very least.
Okay.
Um, and attacking as far as Dublin City.
Okay.
And he's got his son with him, Murchad. We'll go with
Okay.
Murchad.
Okay.
Um, and he kind of he kind of really ran roughshod through Leinster. Um, and then in the next year, we're still seeing battles taking place in Dublin. Well, Dublin had amassed a considerable Viking support from overseas. Um, and now we're in the year 1014, and Brian leads an army to Dublin to engage his opponents um, at the Battle of Clontarf. And this is
Okay.
going to be different than what had been going on, because this is going to be one where the armies set up and they fight each other and they just
Okay.
go at it, right? Um, because most, like I said, most had been like ambushes, cattle raids, small encounters up to this point. Um, and was anything in looking at history, um, what occurred in the battle is uncertain,
Yeah.
um, kind of including exactly where.
Oh,
But
they okay. They don't even have a true location.
well, they do. They think it was located. If you look at the annals of Ulster, um, who there's who fought on Brian's side, who the opponents were, um, but they do kind of say Clontarf, and it's on the northern shore of Dublin Bay, about 2 kilometers from the city center. Um, and so, how the armies maneuver, because we're so uncertain of the location, is
Mm-hmm.
is up for is is up for debate, right? But so what we do know, or what a lot of scholars agree on, is the the Vikings put themselves out to sea like they were leaving, and then they came back later
Oh,
that
they
night.
try to fake them out.
They try to fake them out, right?
Okay.
And so it's thought that um, even this is where the whole like he hates the Vikings thing just doesn't. I don't know what some of the scholars say is that some of Brian's forces included a contingent of Viking mercenaries as well as Gauls from Scotland and the Isle of Man. Um, and
Maybe he doesn't hate all Vikings.
right. Well, or maybe sometimes when you're outnumbered, well, he wasn't outnumbered. Um, but
He wasn't outnumbered. Okay.
no, I think it was like 7,000 on Malmord's side and about 10 on Brian's side.
10,000.
Yeah, so we're
Okay.
talking a significant
Yeah, that's a
battle, right?
significant battle. Yeah, that's
You know, and what the so some reports have is anywhere from 6,000 to 7,500 Vikings to have taken part in the battle and were either killed or drowned. And
or
the
drown.
losses
Okay, so it took place kind of
on the
the
sea and in the
yeah.
river,
Okay.
or the bog, maybe the
The
bog.
the bog.
So it was a really intense battle. You know, I don't
Yeah.
know how long it went on for. Maybe I've got it here. It's not jumping out my mind. But the the there was a massive loss of life, and you're talking axes, hacking. We're talking like everything was up close and personal. You know,
Okay, so we're not talking bows and arrows.
we're not talking bows and I mean maybe, but most of it's got to be axes, swords, short knives, you know,
Yeah.
spears, you know. But what they do know is like in 1760, They were doing Parnell Square being laid out. A large number of skeletons and weaponry were reported recovered from the site. So they uncovered what they believed to be maybe some victims
Okay.
from the Battle of Clontarf. Um, and it's less than a mile from Clontarf, this Parnell Square, and
Okay.
it would have taken you directly to the center of Dublin.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we're talking 1760, so none of that stuff was preserved.
1760.
Right.
When they found it all?
When they found it all. So
Okay.
none of it got preserved.
That's insane.
Yeah, well, 1760, it's not a big deal, I guess. I mean, priorities,
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean,
you
wow.
know.
So how do we know they found stuff?
It was here, let me see here. It says so on my paper. Um,
Okay.
I don't know if it, I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. I'll have to, like I said, there is so much of what is real, and I mean, I really haven't done this quite the justice it deserves. Maybe I'll come back and revisit it. Um, but so some of the stuff that's out there is opposing Brian, where the armies of Dublin, Leinster, and supported by Vikings, primarily Earl Sigurd of Orkney. Um,
Okay.
and then there was several high-profile casualties in the battle. Malmord dies,
Oh, wow.
right?
Okay.
Earl Sigurd dies. Murchad, the son of Brian, dies. Um, and then we get into um, Mal Shitnall. He was on Brian's side,
Okay.
right? But reports are he was in the area, but it doesn't sound like he engaged in the battle.
He just was like a watcher,
Yeah, I think he
or
was.
was he biding his time so he could?
He is probably biding his time, right?
Oh,
See how it all shakes out,
yeah.
And so at the end of the day, it kind of it's kind of a draw, right? Because
Hmm.
possibly because so many of the guys in charge die,
Yeah.
right? On both sides. And we're going to get to Brian. So Brian is he's like you said, he's in his 70s. So the story is he was back in his tent and he getting reports of the battle, and it seems like it's
So
going pretty well.
he's not like super in. He's not in the midst.
No, and he's got some bodyguards, right? And I think they
Okay.
actually kind of drive the Vikings from the field, and he's got a contingent of bodyguards with him, and supposedly there's his sword is in the room with him in the tent.
Hmm.
He gets word that his son has died in battle, and he becomes kind of distraught, and he kneels down and starts praying. And his the story is one story is that his bodyguards are really upset at how upset the king is, and they're going to go avenge the death for him. So
Oh,
they leave.
they leave him alone.
Right, they leave him alone. Now it's about this time. I don't know if they were trying to escape the field or they were actually seeking out Brian. There's a Viking mercenary chief named Brodir, and his band come upon um, Brian in his tent praying, and it's only Brian. and kind of like his valet in the tent.
Okay.
The valet slips out the back. Brian picks up his sword and tries to engage him, but he's so old he can't, and they kill him.
Wow.
The other story is that the Broder comes to the tent, his bodyguards are there, a fight ensues, and they end up killing Brian. At the end of the day, Brian is killed.
Yeah.
Right. But so there's some twist to it too, where it's Good Friday when Brian gets killed. Okay.
Okay.
And and while fighting an army with a pagan component, most notably Sigrid of Orkney's forces. And so it's not lost on people, on scholars, on eulogizers. And you can find it both in Irish and Scandinavian sources, depicted him as a paradigm of righteous Christian kingship, that he died on Good
Ah.
Friday.
Ah.
You know,
Okay. So
so
he could have really died on Good Friday.
right,
Or
I'm pretty
yeah.
sure he did die on Good Friday.
Okay.
Um, because what do I
They're not
have?
there's not people, during that time period who are using his death
Right,
as a
because
way to.
they've got him dying April 23rd, 1014.
Okay.
You know, and so now I I would think that Ireland's kind of in disarray at this point, but after the battle, Brian was succeeded by his son Donchad.
Okay, he had
Um,
another son.
yeah, and he reigned Munster for almost 50 years
Oh
after
wow,
Brian's
okay.
death,
So
and
Shitnall, Mal Shitnall didn't.
you know what? I don't see anything about what happened with that dude.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, because well, maybe he went on to rule Leinster,
Hmm.
as they were ruling Munster. Maybe he,
Maybe he took that
you
part.
know,
Okay. Yeah.
or maybe he cut another spheres of influence deal. But
Hmm.
I didn't see anything what happened with Maul, which is sad. Um, but they did raid him, and or they did rule Munster for almost half a century. And a lot of Brian's descendants were always acknowledged as the kings of Ireland in the late 11th and 12th centuries. Um, but they had a crushing defeat in a pitched battle in Cork, in County Cork, in 1151, and then they just kind of descended into being a regional power.
Okay. So was Brian the last true king of Ireland, of a relatively united Ireland?
I I want to say yes,
Hmm.
because as we kind of look at the aftermath of it, um, you know, one of the significant things that came out of the Battle of Clontarf was Viking raids after that almost came to a halt in Ireland.
Oh, interesting. That's
Yeah. Um, and what the Vikings did, they turned their attention to England and Scotland, right?
yeah.
Um, and then Canute, the son of one Viking leader at Clontarf, was actually crowned king of England in 1016, supposedly.
Ah, yes.
Uh, um, and then and so his dad was at the Battle of Clontarf, and then and only a half century later, 50 years later, the Normans and French-speaking descendants of the Vikings seized the English throne. Um, so, and then Dublin kind of remained in the strict hands until like 1042, and it continued to be the most commercial center in Ireland. Um, and would-be kings through the 11th and 12th centuries always wanted to maintain firm control over Dublin, you know, just because that was the thing. Um,
Yeah.
but there is a lot of information that I didn't have the time out there about the Battle of Clontarf. There is the war with the Irish and with the war of the Irish with the foreigners. It's actually in the saga of the Orkney Islanders and the saga of Burnt and Yall. Um, Actually, in some of the sagas, Brian's talked of highly in there.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and he, for years, and I think kind of to this day, Brian is looked at as, I don't know, a catalyst, a role, I don't know what you'd say, a catalyst, a role model, just of um, fending off foreign invaders. And in 2014, they had a reenactment of the Battle of Clontarf. I mean, he is truly remembered, and that, and I think he probably even played somewhat of a role in how the Irish looked at the English
Okay.
as invaders, and how they should unite and push them out,
Yeah.
possibly. So it was a really, um I don't know, between it's like a lot of stuff. um there there's a lot more out there than, say, like Eggle. There's only a few sources for Eggle. you know there's this
Yeah.
Eggle saga. With this, there are different historians looking at it. That's why, did he really hate the Vikings? I don't know. It sounds like he did. Was he?
Yeah.
you know but the one thing is, it just, if you think about it, it's just amazing that, it's probably one of the, I don't know if it's the first, but it's a major pitched battle in Ireland. I don't know if it's the first, but you're thinking, you're talking about 20,000 people probably fighting,
Yeah.
with 11 to 12,000 dead, you know, give or take.
Yeah.
you know, and 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 I didn't see anything about like how many days it went on or anything like that. And then the number of, I think it was a victory for Brian's forces, but I think it gets kind of skewed because of the death of all the kind of the higher ups.
Yeah.
And I don't think I don't think either side had prepared a plan for, if we win but we don't have our leader, or if it's close and we don't, if it's a tie and we don't have our leader, so where do we go? I don't think anybody
Yeah.
plans for that, which is silly.
Yeah.
You
I can
know,
see that. Yeah.
that you're going in with so much faith you're going to win, and Brian's going to continue to rule and have a transition of power to his son. I mean, obviously it kind of worked because there was a transition of power to his son, and he ruled for 50 years.
Yeah. That's true.
And there's also something, I can't find it right now, but the harp. I don't know if we already talked about this. That the harp, the symbol of, kind of the symbol of Ireland, is traced back to King Brian.
And why is it related to?
I have no idea. I don't know if he played the
Okay.
harp, if he enjoyed the harp, but I saw
Okay.
something that you can trace it back to him, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You know,
Yeah.
and just so it was really interesting. If the listeners out there want me to clean this up and get a little more information, I mean, and the other thing that was kind of frustrating was, I know there was a lot of battles that took place over, like, in the year before the Battle of Clontarf, and probably the year before that. But I didn't find a lot of information on those battles, other than that there was a lot of fighting going on, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
So that there you have it, kind of an Irish thing. Oh, one last thing, if I can find it real quick for you. So just fun fact, the we were talking about the different O'Briens and how the O'Keefes and everybody kind of came to be. There was something in here. Oh, here we go. So this is more of an inside joke. Um, so the O'Briens remained dominant, and after the Anglo-Norman invasion in mid 12th century, the feudal
Invasion
families
of
of
Ireland.
Ireland, yeah, the feudal families of Fitzgerald, Earls of Desmond, and of Butler became, and the Earls of Ormond became powerful in the province.
Okay.
And that's like an inside family thing because we are related to the Fitzgeralds
We are.
in a roundabout several generation thing. Well, actually,
I mean, not. I
sec.
mean, you're second generation
Well,
Fitzgerald.
yeah, and you're third, kind of, once removed, twice removed. I don't know, but anyway, I thought
Yeah.
that was interesting. You know, so yeah, no, a lot of the thing that I found interesting about it is there's a lot of history, and it seems like this is like the turning point in when we're starting to record it better as people.
Yeah. No. No. You're. Well, I think it depends on how you look. Because I mean, if you look at ancient Rome, it
Right.
was very well recorded. But if you look at the British Isles and Ireland and that, it wasn't. It was more recorded after about 600.
Right. But it just seems like this is where it's like you can, like the sagas, you're kind of getting like one boom. And what you've got to do is you've got to put sagas together and see if they interject. And a lot of times they do. But with this, there are a lot of different takes on it.
Sources. Yeah.
Right. A lot of different sources. And I think that's really cool. It's hard,
Yeah.
but it's cool. So that's what I have today. If you guys want me to look more into some of this stuff that I that I was attempting to cover, let me know, and I'll break out the reading glasses
Yeah.
and Google Translate.
Yeah. So, thank you for listening to Medieval Murder. If you have any listener questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please feel free to reach out via our Instagram account at Medieval Murder or via email at info.medievalmurder@gmail.com. Also, check out our merch available on our website, medievalmurder.org, and please feel free to leave us a review or follow us on Spotify. Tune in later for our next podcast.